Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to make this sweet epoxy river cutting board. Alright, so similar to some of my other epoxy river cutting board videos, this one is with some more leftover ambrosia maple. And maple is very fun to use because every time you cut it or drill into it, it kind of smells like maple syrup, so it smells really good. And so what I'm doing here is I basically lined out an approximate kind of river jagged shape, and what I'm doing here is I've got the angle grinder and I have an attachment that is kind of like a rasp looking disc that is very aggressive. I have one that's more aggressive that looks like a chainsaw blade, but that one is not really needed. It's a little more dangerous, but so I'm basically going through and I'm just trying to create attractive shapes. So if I do a pour that's semi-translucent, this riverbank, so to speak, has some visual interest to it. So sometimes they're opaque when you pour them, but if you do them somewhat see-through, that's just a kind of another layer of complexity or interest that kind of just adds to the piece. So I'm taking my time and just trying to make it look as cool and intricate as I can. So basically this is what it looks like, and you can figure on your width that you want to use, but usually you want to stay fairly thin unless you're looking forward to spending a lot of money in epoxy. So the end justifies the means. If you have a project where you want it really wide and a lot of epoxy, then by all means go for it. But if you want to keep the cost down, then obviously you'd want to keep the river somewhat smaller. That's just something to take into consideration. It's probably about $159 if I remember right for about 1.5 gallons of that liquid glass, and that is what I would say is an upper, may not be the most premium brand, but I think cost-wise it's probably up there. You could probably find something more expensive, but it does seem to be a top-of-the-line epoxy for the deep pour. And I have also seen the ambering tests on there, and Liquid Glass did pretty well. I think one of the top ones on there. There is a video on YouTube where a guy pours kind of like a 1 foot thick solid epoxy by about 3 or 4 inches thick, and he leaves them out in the sun, and he just goes through his results, and he did quite a few. And yeah, you know, the results are, that's what, so for the for the thin tabletop epoxy, I have seen that our epoxy is one of the best out there for non-ambering. For the deep pour, Liquid Glass is what I have seen to be one of the better non-ambering products out there. So basically at this point, I have the melamine set up, and I silicone the bottom, and I've got some wood blocks holding down the wood so it doesn't float when you pour in the epoxy. And the wood pieces that are going to come in contact with the epoxy, those are wrapped with packaging tape, and so that helps the epoxy not to stick to it. There's a little sample piece of one of the other. Wow, it looks amazing. Look what I did. Nailed it. Do you like it, honey?
No.
All right, so the finished masterpiece here. Down here. This one is a mixture between aqua over here, like a deep kind of emerald turquoise, and then I put in like a deep sea blue, so I could get some of this mixture here. So it's going to be transparent, semi-transparent. Just ignore it. And then this is the abortion here. Excuse my language. So I did this one with the cheap epoxy. This one here. This stuff here, which is not a deep, thick pour epoxy like the nice turquoise one. That's the turquoise one. I used the good stuff, and the black one I tried just this cheap stuff just to see what would happen. And as you can see here, it was boiling and almost steaming. It wasn't quite giving off steam, but it was hot. And this is just paint that I kind of mixed in and different metallic pigments, and it kind of just pushed it all to the side, and it didn't work out too well. But let's get them out of the mold. Now this is just melamine, silicone the edge, and that was it. I didn't wrap them with any packaging tape, but the blocks that I was holding them down with, we did wrap with packaging tape, and that's these blocks here, and then clamp it down so that the wood doesn't float. Honey, focus. So this is, the bottom of this is just plywood with packaging tape on it. So it worked out pretty good. And actually, I don't know how transparent we're gonna be here. Okay, still semi-transparent. So if you look this way, and we're gonna plane some off. Actually, it might look really cool. It might look kind of cloudy, like storm clouds. Sometimes they illuminate when you get the light in the right scenario. That one didn't come off too good. That one did not work well, but we're going to trim the edges and we're going to plane it, and it's going to be beautiful.
Do we have to have our shitty garage door in the background?
Excuse the shitty garage door. Get out of the picture, door! Ruining everything! See, I can't do this by myself. If I were to act like this by myself, it would just be crazy. It would be crazy. Whoa.
Oh my god.
Not very transparent, but it wasn't meant to be transparent. By the time I plane this down, you never know, it might actually look cool. So we'll see. It was a test piece to test out the cheap epoxy. I think the cheap epoxy is about half the price of the expensive stuff. But I don't know if it will yellow if it's a solid opaque color. And so that's what the test is for. We're gonna maybe expose this thing to light and see how it reacts. Maybe it works out, but it doesn't appear that it's going to be good.
It can be just a cool, like, wicked looking cutting board.
I mean, at the worst case,
maybe you can buy those like metal spikes
that you could give to
and put them on the along the outside.
You could give to Aunt Betty that you're not real fond of. But, okay, that's it for now. See you soon.
How do you do it?
Press the button on the top. Okay, so this one here, as you can see, quite a bit of tear out when planing. You do have to be careful, and I think that is why most people prefer to use a routing method. So you could set up a sled, or if you have a CNC, that might be a better way to go. Yeah, that's very detrimental at this point. I can fix it. Anything can be fixed, working with this stuff. But that is obviously not optimal. There's the art resin. That's for tabletop and thin coats. Good for non-yellowing. And what I'm going to do is I set up a little dam down there with tape. And I'm just going to fill it. I've tinted this similarly to the previous pour. So kind of like a light aqua blue. And I'm just going to try and fill these voids. Let that cure and continue on a couple days later with the rest of this process. I am interested in doing a board with maybe just some light sanding and doing a top coat of epoxy, just because I think that is going to be so much less work than going through all the sanding, all the grits, all the way up to 2,000 to 3,000 grits sometimes, and then the polish. I think that'll just be an easier product to produce. But like anything, these are when you have these tools, you keep these tools in your tool bag and you pull them out when you need to for different projects. These are skills that can carry over to many different things. So I'm never afraid to learn and to fail and to grow, basically. Okay, so here it is. It's cured, and time to use this safer method of sanding. So normally I use my rough belt sander with a 60 or 80 grit paper. I've had a couple of these cutting boards where I work my way all the way through the grits just to find out later that I still have some small grooves from the sander, from the belt sander. So probably one thing I could do to minimize that is to get a couple different. Right now I think I only have 1 or 2 grits for my belt sander, but it would probably help to maybe start with a 60, work my way to like an 80, a 120, maybe a 220, and then I could start with the orbital or the vibrating sander, and that would cut down on the overall time. Trying to work your way, because once you switch to the orbital like this one and the vibrating, you're gonna remove much less material. So as much as you can do with a belt sander is going to be that much quicker. So especially now as I'm repeating that, I'm realizing that those were my mistakes. Well, for one, I didn't check good enough before moving to another grit to make sure that I had removed the previous grit, and 2, it's just going to be more time and effort economical to work through the grits on the belt sander and then do the final detail with the orbital or the sanding or the vibrating sander. So at this point, I had some silicone that I poured to contain some of the stuff when I poured it, and then I didn't do it on the other one because I realized it really wasn't needed. And you're gonna have epoxy that flows underneath it. You could probably silicone the edges. Well, no, the epoxy is gonna flow underneath. You would have to do a whole bead all the way around this thing to contain the river from flowing underneath it. So it's just one of those things. You might as well just go ahead and plane it off or belt sand that off. But basically at this point, I worked my way 80 grit all the way to 80, 120, 220, 320, 400, 600, 800, 1,000, all the way up to, I believe, 3,000. Yeah, I think all the way up to 3,000 on this one, and as well as 2 polishing pads, 1 rough grit, 1 fine grit. And here I'm just cleaning up the edges on my brand new DeWalt table saw. I'm so glad I got rid of that old crappy Porter cable that eventually it just wouldn't raise or lower anymore. I tried rebuilding it. I tried once I broke a couple of the gears on there, I tried replacing them, and I just got fed up with it and eventually just bought a new table saw. But this DeWalt one is really nice. I do recommend it if you're going to buy a new table saw. That's not a large shop table saw. This one works really good. It has a really smooth surface. Like you would think polished steel, like the other ones, is about as smooth as it gets. But this has some kind of coating on there that the wood just will slip right through. Like it's so nice. But yeah, just cleaning up the edges here, and I'll finish up the sanding and the polishing. Okay, so without further ado, the good stuff. Now it's pretty smooth. Actually, it's really smooth. It's 3,000 grit smooth, but it's not polished. So let's get that vitamin E oil on here for cutting boards and food safe. I just rub it in with my hands. It's great for your skin, so why not? And let's get this baby polished up. Look at the beauty. I'm telling you, as soon as you put that top coat on there, that's when you can really appreciate your hard work, and it just really becomes something. So you just want to rub this in, get it in both sides. Ideally, you want to see that sit for a while and absorb into the wood for protection. But more times than not, I find that most people don't use these boards for any type of cutting. It's more like a showpiece. But in the future, if it needs more protection after you've washed it and handled it a lot, more vitamin E, cutting board oil, and beeswax and stuff like that is a nice second coat for that. So here I got the variable speed angle grinder / polisher. This is a fine polishing attachment here, like you would use for your car. And I'm just running this about medium to high speed, nice and slow, and just getting the final details, the final polish. This is kind of, you're not doing terribly a lot here, but it's the nice part of the project. You're done, and you're just putting the cherry on top, so to speak. Alright guys, and it's finished. You bring these suckers out into the light and you can really appreciate the beauty of the epoxy. This was 2 different pours, actually 2 different colors, I'm sorry. There was a semi-transparent turquoise and a deeper blue that I poured in later and tried to not completely mix. I wanted there to be a slight difference in opacities just to give it that cloudy kind of storm cloud look when you look at it the right way. That's the back side there. So as you can see, you do get some nice illumination. You know, you could do LED lights or other cool things with this stuff. So here it is on the inside. This is what it would look like in your home, on your counters, not outside. But inside or out, they will look good either way. So thanks for watching. Please hit the like button. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them down below. And we will see you soon in a video. Thanks for watching. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you want to help support the channel, you can go to our t-shirt store and check out our t-shirts. We have Super Handyman t-shirt, faster than an unskilled worker, more precise than a day laborer. He is Super Handyman. In store now while supplies last.